Call the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Elgin City Council for January 11th, 2023 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Dixon.
Here.
Good.
Here.
Martinez.
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Rauschenberger.
Here.
Shaw.
Here.
Steffen.
Here.
Thorne.
Here.
Mayor Captain.
Here. Approval of the previous minutes of the previous meeting of December 21st, 2022.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and second for approval. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Dixon.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Martinez.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Rauschenberger.
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Steffen.
Yes.
Thorne.
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. We have no special presentations. Mr. Manager, item A.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members. Item A is the 2022 through 23 bulk road salt joint purchasing program agreement. Last February, the city approved the procurement commitment with the state of Illinois for its annual bulk road salt supply purchase. The state requires municipalities to make written commitments for its bulk salt allotments during the spring of each year. The city was provided with the results of the state bid in early November and notified that this year's price per ton is $84.54. Although the Public Works Department issued a commitment of 6,000 tons of bulk road salt in 2022, it can increase its quantities to 7,200 tons. That's a 120% increase. Approving this agreement authorizes, and that's the recommendation of Public Works because of the favorable pricing. Approving this agreement will authorize the city to purchase 120% of its maximum procurement for the 2022-23 winter season.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none. Apparently, we're going to save a lot of salt this year. So far.
Don't speak.
So clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Martinez.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Rauschenberger.
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Steffen.
Yes.
Thorne.
Yes.
Mayor
Yes,
Captain.
motion's approved 9-0.
Item B is the bulk road salt procurement commitment with the state of Illinois for the 2023-24 winter season. This is the precursor commitment from the city that allows the city to participate in the purchase of bulk road salt, which will be presented to the council later next year. So approving this commitment authorizes the Public Works Department to bid between amounts of 6,000 to 9,000 tons of bulk road salt. Typical pricing for salt ranges from $50 per ton to $120 per ton. Again, we will be presenting with the recommended purchase to the City Council next fall.
Move for approval. Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Martinez.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Rauschenberger.
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Steffen.
Yes.
Thorne.
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0.
Item C is change order number 1 for bid 22-026, the Bluff City Combined Sewer Separation Phase 3. The city awarded this project to Boulder Contractors in May 2022. During the first month of the project, the Union of Operating Engineers held a strike against the major aggregate material suppliers, and that significantly impacted the availability of materials necessary for the installation of the underground infrastructure. That in turn caused a delay in completing the project, requiring the final work of asphalt resurfacing to be completed in the spring of 2023. Staff is recommending this change order number 1 to enable Boulder Contractors to extend the contract completion time. There is no additional cost for this change order.
Move approval. Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Martinez.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Rauschenberger.
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Steffen.
Yes.
Thorne.
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0.
Item D is a golf cart global positioning services agreement with Club Car. This is a 3-year agreement that will enable the city to upgrade the golf carts that it uses at its Bowes Creek Golf Course with the most state-of-the-art GPS system. This GPS system allows golfers to identify the exact yardage for playing golf. It integrates Bluetooth speakers for entertainment during the rounds, dynamic computerized generated views of the golf holes as you play them, in addition to access to online streaming, golf tips, food and beverage ordering for potential potential advertising during special events. With the Bowes Creek Golf Club having the higher-end golfing experience, it's the golf department's recommendation that the golf carts be outfitted with these new GPS units.
Move for
approval. Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Thorne?
I thought I would add, for those of you that don't know, that GPS system also has an automatic shut-off if you happen to drive the cart somewhere you're not supposed to, which is a good thing. So at any rate, it's a great system, and it's very helpful to the golfers.
Are you speaking from experience, getting shut
I
off?
am speaking from experience. I didn't mean to hit my ball there, and I realized I needed to walk to it.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
yes,
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0.
Item E is an agreement with Pictometry International for oblique aerial imagery software. The city's GIS database relies on aerial photography for its base image data. The city's been using the aerial photography services of Pictometry since 2010 to provide critical property details such as building heights, building access points, site obstructions, and landscape features. In the past, this information could only be obtained with time-consuming site visits, but integrating this information into the GIS database allows the city's police, fire, public works, neighborhood services, and community development departments to access this information without making on-site visits. This proposed 6-year agreement with Pictometry contemplates new updated aerial imagery of the city every 2 years, with the continuing ability to make side-by-side comparisons between the new imagery and the previous year's imagery.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Ms. Rauschenberg?
is this, you said a 6-year agreement, is this just the first year, or that's for all
It's
6 years?
$22,000 a year, and there would be an option to not continue with the services if the council chose to do so. But this is a proposed 6-year agreement at $22,000 annually.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Stefan?
Just in point of interest, I'm noticing it's my grandparents' house in the corner of Park and Gifford in the image on the second page. I just noticed that. That's it.
Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes,
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0.
Item F is a mechanical engineering services contract with Consolidated Consulting Engineers. The repair or replacement of HVAC equipment in the city is necessary over the years to keep it functioning properly. The city issued a request for proposal in 2021 based on a list of identified projects with the intent of extending the contract into 22 and 23 based on new projects coming forward. The scope of services change recommended in this initiative will allow the maintenance department to adjust to the changing needs of the city because priorities can change quickly. This is an annual initiative in the amount of $125,000.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
yes,
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion is approved 9-0.
Item G is amending the term of contract with Andres Medical Billing for emergency medical service billing, collection, and management reporting. The fire department responds to about 11,000 emergency medical service calls each year. About 81% of these calls result in transports eligible for billing. The city's annual cash receipts for EMS services range from $4.5 million in 2020 and go all the way up to $6.7 million in 2020 and 2021 respectively. The EMS billing, well, I'm looking through, sorry, I have the changes here. The city in 2020 began participating in what's called the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program. This is a federally funded Medicaid program that allows municipalities to collect additional Medicaid reimbursement for ambulance services above and beyond what the state reimburses the city. Andres has been instrumental in helping the city bill and account for these additional reimbursements, and that program has generated additional ambulance revenues of $1 million in 2020 and $3.2 million in 2021, and it's estimated to be $3.5 million in 2022. After renegotiating the commission that Andres was getting for this billing to reflect the increased revenue that the city was getting, this is a recommendation to extend the terms of the agreement through February 2025 at the current collection rates.
Move for approval?
Second.
It's been moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion is approved 9-0.
Item H are upgrades to the police department's evidence storage lockers. The current evidence and cell phone storage lockers are obsolete due to age and new technology that exists. This purchase will upgrade and modernize those components and is being funded with drug asset forfeiture funds.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0.
Item I is the purchase of Gray Key Mobile Forensic Access Software from Grayshift LLC. This software is a state-of-the-art tool that extracts encrypted or inaccessible data from mobile devices running Apple iOS and the Android operating systems. The police department has been using this software since 2017 and is seeking to continue using this important and crucial forensic tool. Using Gray Key, it should be noted, is predicated on legal authority granted either by a search warrant or the owner's consent.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0.
Item J are proposed amendments to the city's Board of Fire and Police Commissioners ordinance, making changes regarding police officer hiring requirements. The police department is seeking to liberalize the minimum requirements necessary to sit for the entry-level police officer exam. Currently, those eligible to sit for the exam are required to possess a bachelor's degree or 60 credit hours, or have 3 years of active service in the U.S. military, 3 years as a full-time police officer, 3 years as a full-time employee with the city, be an Elgin Explorer with 4 years of participation and not less than 400 hours of volunteer time in the program, or have an associate's degree of applied science and criminal justice from Elgin Community College. Those are all the precursors for sitting for an exam. Proposed amendments to the hiring ordinance will allow for an applicant to have either a high school diploma or GED to sit for the exam. There are also preference points that will be given for several categories. The police department back in June 2021 brought a recommendation forward to the city to modify these hiring requirements and to include the high school or GED as a prerequisite for sitting. At that time, with the anticipated creation of the Community Task Force on Policing occurring a couple months later, this item was postponed until the task force could provide input. In November 2022, recommendations from the task force subcommittee on training, recruitment, hiring, retention, and promotion were presented to the city, and they included changing the educational requirement to take police entrance exams to either having a high school diploma or GED, and also develop a refined preference point for police hiring. With the police department being committed to recruiting outstanding candidates to serve the Elgin community, it believes that by reducing the educational requirement, that will similarly reduce barriers, allowing for more applicants to apply for the position of entry-level officer. There is one exception in this recommendation that differs from the task force, and that involves the number of preference points that are afforded to persons with a military background. There is a state statute that provides for 5 preference points for veterans, and it's the recommendation by staff that to maintain consistency with the Illinois statute, the police department recommends 5 preference points for veterans as part of the hiring, as opposed to the 3 that were part of the task force. Sorry for the line. That's it.
Move for approval?
Second?
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion?
The approval includes the recommended change to that point?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got it, okay.
Okay, Ms. Powell?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Captain. A question I have in terms of the application of the preference points. I know that we have a preference point program currently in place for firefighters that is currently used. Is it applied the same way once the test is taken and once they've gone through a certain portion of the employment process, the screening process? I guess my question is would there be anything that would prohibit us from applying the preference points at the time of people taking the test? To allow them to move further up into the process quicker?
I am not familiar off the top of my head as to when the process of the awarding of the points
It was in the
takes
memo.
place.
So, it's,
I think the chief is here, and she sits on the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners.
it's in the,
Yeah, the way it's shown in the memo, the applicants take the written test. The top 80 applicants that pass the written test are then scheduled for their background investigation. And once the applicant passes the background investigation, goes through an interview, and then candidates who pass the interview, that's when they are awarded preference points after the interview process. My question is, can the preference points be applied in order to get people into the top 80 candidates, like at an earlier point in the process?
Yes, so if I'm understanding correctly, you want to know when the preference points can be given and when they need to be applied. So I had a conversation with Tim Bennett, and the preference points have to be given by law once the written exam once everything is completed. Then their final score, so that encompasses the written portion, and then they're interviewed in front of the Police and Fire Commission, then they're given preference points.
So you're saying by law, we have to do it just after the written test?
After
or-
their final score in the process, which encompasses every part of the process.
Okay, so
Then
we
preference
can't-
points are applied. And that's something that Tim Bennett and I had talked about along with the legal department.
So we can't insert the preference points before they go through the background investigation and the interview process, is what
Yeah,
you're
once
saying?
everything is, so written test is taken, after the written test, then if they move on, and again, depending on how many applicants we get, if we get up to 80, we're not even getting that now. So we've pushed through everyone that's passed the written score. After that, then there's a background that's conducted. If they pass the background, then they sit in front of the Police and Fire Commission for their, for that process. Scores are then tallied from their written test along with the Police and Fire Commission. At that point, their final score is administered. Then preference points are applied. Then after that, they're given conditional employment, which then they have to go for their medical, a psychological exam. So that happens once they're on an eligibility list.
Got it. And the reason I'm asking this question is just recalling the conversations that were had at the task force level in terms of, I believe, what the ultimate goals were to get more people that met those criteria, that were residents, that were explorers, et cetera, into the interview pool. I thought it would make more sense if we were able to do it, to apply the preference points earlier on in the process. Because if people are going to get eliminated potentially because they're not in the top 80 candidates, because they're not going to be able to apply those preference points, assuming they pass the exam. You know, in my mind, it would be great if at least they take the test, they pass the exam, so at least we know that they have at least a portion of the basic skills to move along in the process. They get the preference points to ensure that they are in the top 80 so that they could move along and be a part of the background, get their background investigation, get the interview. I'm a little concerned that applying them later on still defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
Mr. Kozel.
I wasn't able to answer your question directly, but listening to the explanation that's provided, I can almost surmise the taking of the test and passing the test is the prerequisite threshold. And so that's why the preference points are only for those who meet that initial threshold, and then that moves them up the ladder. That is my guess is what the logic is behind the state law and the award of the preference points behind
yeah,
after
and
the
to,
test.
you know, just for clarification, as it relates to the military and in the law, I'll read for you exactly what it says. No person entitled to additional points under the subsections shall be required to claim that preference or credit before an examination is held. The preference shall be given after the posting or publication of the eligibility list. So and this was a conversation that Tim and I had, if this is, in order to keep it consistent, the preference points are given once everything is done. If what you can do, we take the top 80, and again, we're not even getting 80 applicants, we used to, but we can expand that number if we choose to do that. So 80 is a number that the department sets, you know, based upon applications. When we used to get 400 or 500 applications, you know, we would have a lot of people where we would have to say we can't do 200 backgrounds. So you'd have to have a cutoff point. So that's something that we can, I think the best thing that we should do is, in my opinion, is this is a first time we're changing the requirements. Let's see what kind of applicants we get in this, because this is the first time that the department is doing this. So let's see what we get, let's see how the process goes, and then if there need to be adjustments to come back and have that conversation about adding an additional step where the city, you know, by ordinance, you guys decide we want to have some other preference point system in there, or what, that's something we'd have to talk to the legal department, how can we do that? But I would say, you know, this is the first time doing it. I think we're going to get more applicants. I think we're going to get a bigger pool of people because we cannot compete with departments around us where it's just a high school diploma. And so I would, my recommendation is, you know, let's see how this goes the first time. We will be testing very soon because we have open positions. And this will be a good gauge for us to determine if there are some modifications or adjustments that need to be made.
Okay, I'm interested in seeing that, and I know that the 80 number is not codified, so
Correct. We
that
set
is
that.
something,
Yeah.
yes, like you said, it's something that the department sets based on the number of applications that you get, so I was just hoping that there was some leeway in terms of how we apply those preference points. I understand that it's by state law, how we apply and when we apply the veteran preference points, but I was just hoping that some of the other preference points in terms of folks that are residents, folks who are police explorers, and some of the other criteria that's been set, that we could apply that sooner rather than later to bump people up in the process.
And I'll also say that the written test score is at a 72% pass. That's what you need to pass the written test score. So I would feel a little uncomfortable if we start pushing that number a little bit lower, because there has to be some, and part of that is if you had someone that took the written test and, you know, let's say they get 58, 60%, and then with the 12 preference points, that pushes them up to 72. Again, every situation is different, but I think, you know, having that kind of a set standard, and we can have a conversation about, do we need to reduce that number? Should it be 70? Should it be higher? I don't know that until we at least do this first process and see what we get. See what we get. If there's things that we need to adjust, then we can do that.
Right, and what I'm suggesting is not suggesting that we lower that 70-point threshold. What I'm suggesting is for those who meet that 70-point threshold, at that point, that is when the preference points would be applied to make sure or to propel those people up higher into the process, that once we set a cutoff, whether it be 80 or 100, they would be more than likely or more likely to be included in the folks that are chosen to move forward.
Yep.
That's what I was asking.
And I understand that, and I think that that's especially when we set the number, if we get 80 people that go on to a background in this next round, I'll be very happy. But I can tell you in the past testing cycles, the last one, I think I put the numbers in there, everyone is moving on that meets that 72%. So because we're not getting people to apply. And so if we have that problem, that's a good problem to have where we then can increase that number.
Okay. This clarification is for Corporation Counsel. Are we sure that the application that we're looking at in terms of the preference points, because we're applying it to all the preference points? I know by law, the clarification on when the preference points can be added for veterans is very clear, but are we clear that that prohibits us from changing when it applies, when we can apply it for all preference points?
Thank you, Councilwoman. I haven't specifically looked at that. Based on what the chief is reporting, it sounds like that specifically has been discussed with Tim Bennett and the Corporation Counsel. It's something that we can definitely confirm
Okay.
after the fact, but it sounds like that all has already been looked at, and the state statute does specify how those need to be applied.
Okay, because I didn't see that in the state statute, so if someone can provide that to me, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. That's it? Anything else, Tish?
That's it regarding that.
Okay. Yes. Ms. Martinez?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I think it was a great recommendation to bring it down to a high school or a GED, because how many other police departments required a bachelor's degree? It wasn't that many, was it?
No, and it is absolutely a barrier. And again, you know, in 2021, when I brought this in front of the council prior to the creation of the task force, it was because we were seeing our numbers significantly decrease from where we used to be. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but you know, trying something different. And again, there are larger departments near us where the requirement is just a high school diploma, and they are absolutely taking people, candidates from coming here to Elgin. And so just to be competitive, especially in this location, and we, you know, if a person is testing for Elgin, they're probably testing for Aurora, they're probably testing for Rockford, they're probably testing in those departments. It's a high school diploma. So, you know, it's a barrier. And again, you know, I'm a huge proponent of education. I encourage it. But I also think that, you know, we've had the discussion many times, you know, education does not sometimes equate to, a degree doesn't equate to, does that make a good police officer, to intelligence, you know, life experience, where do they come from, what do they bring, military experience. So this will be a good test for us. It's a good, this is, we're going to be hiring, you know, soon. We need to start testing. We need to start getting the process going. And then I can report back to the council on our numbers. And then we can maybe have that conversation about adjustments.
Because back in the day when you were hired, it was not a requirement.
It was just a high school diploma.
Right, but looking at some numbers that you presented was now, people that were hired then and didn't have a degree, but then once in their career, they went ahead and got degrees. And I think it's a very high number of people on the police department that have degrees that were able to get it afterwards. So I agree with you. I think the life experiences are very important. And this is good that this will help us to recruit more people, because that's what we need. But understanding that by not requiring a bachelor degree, it doesn't mean that they don't have to pass everything else.
Correct.
You know? Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Brauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0.
Item K is Community Task Force on Policing recommendations. The task force presented its final recommendations to the city last September. A total of 26 recommendations were presented as part of its report of findings and recommendations. The police department has been presenting these recommendations for consideration over several city council meetings and is again prepared to make recommendations or present recommendations this evening. This evening's recommendations from the task force were not from any specific subcommittee, but rather consist of recommendations made by task force members outside of the 4 established subcommittees. There are 8 recommendations included as part of this memorandum.
Okay. First recommendation is in collaboration with School District U46, the Elgin Police Department should work to provide a presentation, video, and/or in-person presentation by the police to all District U46 schools regarding incorporating Faith's Law and Aaron's Law.
Move for approval. Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Ms. Powell?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There are several recommendations that we'll be looking at tonight that we, as the city council, don't necessarily have jurisdiction on. There are recommendations that I would recommend that we kind of bundle together and send to the school district or districts that are covered in Elgin, because we can't dictate what the school districts do. But explaining that we did have a community policing task force, and these are some of the recommendations that they made that pertain to what happens in the school district. This particular one, I did have a conversation with the school district about to find out what they're currently doing. And Aaron's Law has been already incorporated into the curriculum, and they're currently, they're doing actually the same thing with Faith's Law. So that, and I believe by state statute that they had to, all the school districts were required to incorporate that into their curriculum. But I know that U46 in particular said that they, Aaron's Law has been incorporated, and they're in the process of incorporating Faith's Law. But this, along with probably at least one of the other recommendations, I would maybe amend the motion that we can send this to the school district and ask them to consider incorporating it on their end. But I'm open to listening to, I mean.
So you're asking that this comes from the council, but it's not necessarily a recommendation from the council. Passing this on as something for the school district to discuss
And consider.
and consider. Yeah. So we're not picking or choosing, and I would suggest we find the other ones in here and try to do them all at the same time.
Number 5.
The other one that I noted that I think needs to go to the school district was, I believe, item number 5.
Yep.
Let me see which one.
Yep.
Yes, work along with their advisory
The
boards.
SROs.
Yes, regarding the SROs and amending their job descriptions. We don't make the job descriptions for the SRO officers. That's the school district, because they obviously employ officers, not just City of Elgin officers. They employ officers across the whole district. So we could pass and say that we agree or concur with these, and then pass it along to the school district, just with some context that, hey, this came from our task force, these were recommendations, city council concurs with these, but obviously this is in your wheelhouse, and ask them to please consider implementing these recommendations. I think that would be most appropriate. So I don't know whether you're looking for a modified recommendation.
Ms. Martinez?
I agree with that, because I feel that U46, dealing with other communities, when they make a contract out that they're hiring the police department to be the SROs, they're the ones that are deciding what it is they want. Should we go ahead and recommend something? It doesn't hurt to do that, right? But I think that should be coming from the school district, and they should be implementing it in their contract. So I would go with that. I would agree with
As a suggestion, how about if we ask staff to take a look at items 1 and 5, create some wording for that, say the city council does approve, but we'd like to see a little bit different presentation and have staff come up with something for us.
So, I mean, are you saying that we shouldn't vote to formally approve these and then ask staff to
We can
send?
do that. We can formally approve them and ask staff to rewrite these for us in a letter. But then you'd have to
And send
approve the letter.
Also, number 3 would probably, if you're going to, incorporate things that need to be taken to the school district, as stated in the memo, we can network with them and communicate that and work with them and make that recommendation. Number 3 should probably also be included.
Mr. Manager?
I understand the direction, so if it is recommendations 1, 3, and 5, I can craft a letter advising the U46 school board. I'll write to the superintendent, Dr. Sanders, let him know that this was something that was considered by the city council and that it's being sent to his for consideration for potential approval by the U46 board.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, I guess I feel like we're maybe overthinking it. I mean, these recommendations tonight, to me, when I read through them, would not translate into like code or different additional laws from a city perspective. These are recommendations, right? The task force has made recommendations to the city council. We are, at this time tonight, we're saying, yeah, we agree with that recommendation or we don't agree with that recommendation. But there's, and from their point, then we're asking, staff then to take action upon that. If we vote right now on 1, 3, and 5, we're just stating to the U46, yeah, the council recommends that our police department get involved and volunteer to be a part of it.
That's what I said.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I don't think we need to change anything. I think that's the tone of the entire memo tonight. That's all we need to do. I don't think we need to change anything. That's what I guess I was.
No, I wasn't saying change anything. I was just stating that some of the things some of the recommendations are asking us to do things that are not within our jurisdiction. So I was just saying that if the council concurs with items 1, 3, and 5, then we send that concurrence and recommendation to the school district that does have jurisdiction over it. That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Do not tell them to do their business.
Correct. Just making recommendations, ideas.
Mr. Dixon?
Thank you. Just food for thought while we're talking about this. These 1, 3, and 5, we have the contracts with the school district, and we approve that contract every year with the SROs. Have we thought about or discussed the possibility of incorporating some of these as a prerequisite as far as the requirements of, in the contract in order to secure EPD officers? You have to comply with, items 1, 3, and 5. Maybe get some.
Yeah, so what I was planning to do, since we're ready in January, have those conversations with U46 now. If it's something that we need to incorporate into our memorandum of understanding, then we do that. Or they may say, we don't need to go that route because we can work with the school resource officer. So I was waiting to hear what the council wants to do, then I can make that next step and reach out to the superintendent and then see how we need to do that. So that was something that I did consider.
Okay,
Yep.
so then I would recommend too then that we go ahead and approve the recommendations and that we include that in the memorandum of understanding so that it's on record for us, but it's also on record as they understand exactly what we're looking to do in securing the contract.
Anything else? Okay. So staff has directions, and then we would like to amend this to vote on items 1, 3, and 5 at the same time? No, you want to do them separately? Okay. All right.
Okay.
That's fine.
I already did move for approval in a second.
Okay. All right, there's a move for approval on item 1. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Steppen?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Item 2 is the Elgin Police Department should maintain all existing programs for the community and develop 2 more programs to assist further in community engagement. For example, partner with Gail Borden Library Spanish-Speaking Services and the Laotian community to develop programs specifically for the Spanish and Lao communities in Elgin.
Move for approval. Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, this is one I won't be supporting, and just I guess my view of it is, I feel like we're doing so many programs already, that we say, well, let's do 2 more, well then, well, how many is that then? I mean, I don't even know, I can't even tell you how many programs we have now. So, I mean, so it's, I guess my direction is, continue doing what you're doing, chief. That's my direction. And so I guess this, to me, is just too prescriptive, and I'm not in the prescriptive business. I agree with what the recommendations say of, yeah, continue to reach out to our community like you're doing. There's different groups of our areas and sectors of our community. Do what we need to do where we, as the data shows us, where we need to connect the most. And so that's, to me, this is a little bit too prescriptive, I guess. And some of these, that's my concern with some of these, is just too prescriptive. I think the essence behind them, we're doing and we're continuing to doing, and I don't feel the need to continue to kind of push, I guess, is my feeling. Thank you.
Anything else? Ms. Powell.
Yes, thank you. This question would be for Chief Lally. As soon as you get comfortable sitting down, I ask you to get back up again. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you know your department, and I know that we do have specific programs, and we have a Hispanic outreach coordinator that works for the department doing Latino outreach in our community. We used to have a Laotian outreach coordinator at some point too, but we no longer have that person. Can you speak to some of the specific Spanish and Laotian programs, outreach programs that we currently have coming out of the police department?
Yes, and in the next couple days, you guys will be receiving our annual report, which will highlight the over 700 community events that we attended last year, inclusive of focusing on Spanish community events. So we do a Spanish Citizen Police Academy, and this is just off the top of my head. We work really well with the Senior Center to host Spanish events. A quinceañera event, we just recently did a Halloween Day of the Dead event, well attended. We also attended the first Latina in law enforcement event, which we did not host, but we attended and have those connections. So our focus is always to continue to look at multilingual events and incorporate our community. In terms of Laotian, that's somewhere that we do need to put some effort in. I do have a person who sits on my chief advisory committee who's attached to the Laotian community. In the past, we've had some events, just almost like a coffee like a cop type of event, but we do need to focus if this is what the community is asking for. So I'll be networking with her to see what can we do in her community to see what are the needs. Is it a presentation? We've done presentations, and it's usually when people are asking for something, because we want to be very mindful and sensitive to, we don't want to interject ourselves into something if they don't want to see the police necessarily. So we have to be mindful of cultural differences. We have to be mindful of, the framework in which, we need to maybe translate some of the information. So we do a lot in the Spanish community. Obviously, our population is a high Spanish community, and we will continue those community engagement efforts.
And even though it's not included in the stated recommendation, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about any specific outreach programs that you're doing in the African American community. Can you speak to some of those?
Specific where it's just a event for African American community members, we haven't done anything specific like that. Okay. We host a lot of community events where all members of our community are there. If that's something that the community is asking for and what that would look like, is it centered on coffee with the cop specific to certain demographics, certain areas? That's something that we can explore. Again, I don't want to exclude people. And so everyone's invited to all our events. Now, I do understand sometimes there might be a language barrier, which is why people don't attend, and we need to be sensitive to that. Specific just to the African American community, we haven't just hosted that type of event. But it's definitely, if that's what, again, if the community is asking for that, then we'll make sure to, reach out and say, what can we do? We have attended Second Baptist Church. We do have community conversations there. I've attended events there. But again, that's upon being invited. So again, we want to make sure that we're sensitive to what people are asking for and making sure that we're not, here come the police and we're going to tell you about us and and some people are like, well, yeah, we don't really want to, no, we don't really, we're fine. But I understand your point. I'll make sure that we do reach out to certain communities.
Yeah, and the reason I understand the gist of this particular recommendation, because there are specific language barriers in these two communities, in our Latinx community and our Laotian community. So I know that because of language barriers in those two communities that could potentially exist, special and different outreach has to happen. The reason why I specifically asked about the African American community is because that is, historically been a community that there have been tensions between the community and the police. And I recognize exactly what you're saying in terms of not inserting yourself uninvited into spaces, but I guess I'm looking for something just kind of like the opposite of creating a space and inviting the African American community in. So, and kind of to what Councilman Shaw said, maybe instead of being so prescriptive with this one, maybe it would be good to get a list of the programs that you currently have in those areas and get your recommendations for how we can expand per this recommendation into the Spanish-speaking community more, if there are some other ones that you feel that we, in consulting with the community, like maybe working with Centro or the Elgin Hispanic Network, what are some other areas that maybe they can assist with, working with our community partners, working with the Laotian population to see, in our Laotian organizations, how would they recommend, where do they see the gaps? So I know the motion's already been made, but I almost feel like I'd like to see what we are currently doing, which I know is a lot, before I say, hey, add some more, because I think before we add more, we need to know where we are, and if we're going to add more, I think we need to be intentional about filling gaps that exist and incorporating those communities into those gaps, as well as adding the African American community into that as well, just because of the historic tensions that have existed, if that makes sense to everyone.
Yes.
So do we need to modify the motion?
Can I just get clarity on that?
I think we're going to have to do more than just do that. I think we might have to table this and have it rewritten. And have the chief come back with some information.
Because it seems
my
like
suggestion.
if there's already like 700 events that you attend to,
So-
does it mean like it's going to be 702?
So what I would suggest is you will be receiving the annual report in the next 2 days. In the annual report, there's a list of all our community events and activities. It's not a complete list, but it's a big list. If you take a look at that, and then, I can either just wait to get some feedback from the council as to, do you need more information, or does that give you what you need? And then from there, maybe take a look at some of the specific gaps that you're talking about. We do network with the Elgin Hispanic Network. We're at the meetings. We're everywhere. I mean, we're, at ECC through their MAGIC organization. So the connections are there. That's not the issue. It's more about just what do they want?
Yes.
And how do they want it? So my suggestion would be is take a look at that list and then maybe provide me with some feedback. If there's something that's missing specific that you would need to know, I can identify some of the gaps, reach out to some of these specific communities that you're talking about, Councilwoman, and then take it from there.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Dixon?
Thank you. Before we table this, I just want to make sure that we're all clear. There's actually two parts to the recommendation. The first part is to maintain all existing programs for the community. And then the other part is what we're discussing. So maybe instead of tabling the entire recommendation, we alter it to approve the recommendation from the task force to maintain all the existing programs and then leave the other part off, in which the chief can then come back and make those other formal recommendations.
Mr. Shaw?
I just reiterate again, I mean, the task force has met for many, many months. They've made recommendations. This is the opportunity where we're responding to them. I think we need to continue to move, we need to continue to push forward. We keep tabling, we talk about it more, we talk about it more. We're going to continue to talk to the police department forever. That's just the normal nature of a city council
every 2 weeks
and our
I'll be
chief.
here.
And so I guess, let's move forward with our reactions to the recommendations as is. There's going to be follow-up, right? There's going to continue to be conversations where even after this is done, you're going to look at the report that you get in 2 days, you're going to look at the report that you get in a month from now, and you're going to have additional thoughts and things. We can always come back with additional things. What I'm saying is, I guess I'm pushing for a little closure, I guess. That's I guess, a little piece of my thought process here as well. And so I would recommend not to table. I can't stop a table unless there's enough votes to, but I would recommend we continue to move forward. That's my only thought process.
Okay, so if we move forward with this, the council will recommend this. We'll take a vote on this, and then sometime in the future, next 2, 3, whatever, months, weeks, we'll come back and rediscuss some of these other things and gather more information. So that doesn't put an urgency on it. This then will be the final recommendation from the council, and vote on it as is, and understand that we may want to make some modifications later. But that's not going to happen in the next few days.
That we'll be getting more information from
Right,
the
exactly,
police department to.
Right. As Mr. Martinez says, whether we have 702. Mr. Dixon?
Yeah, I would just suggest that we set a time frame in which we will request for you to come back. So if that's end of the first quarter, you have some hiring that you need to do, maybe at that time you come back and you report out about what you received and where we are with that, and you add this on to it.
Correct.
At
Okay.
that point, I just don't want to leave it open
I don't know how many more items we have to go through. I know how many tonight, but in the future. But one way to do this is to come back at the end and say that in our review of the recommendations, we came back and we have come up with this more information. And we can tack it on at the end and say, here's the council's final recommendation. We would also recommend to do this and this and this and this. That way kind of because we may run into this again somewhere before we're done. And that way kind of wraps it all. I would hope that will be done here.
Yeah, so
I'd have
just
been hoping this would be done a long time ago, so.
So there are 2 more subcommittee recommendations that will be brought forth to the council. It's the subcommittee on racial disparities. I believe there are 4 recommendations within that subcommittee, and then there is the civilian review board. And so those two still need to be brought through council in the next month and a half here.
Okay. And then we can wrap this all up and have a summary at the end and say these are the things that we've seen. Okay?
Yep.
All right, then we have a motion on the table. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
No?
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 8-1. Item 3 is the Elgin Police Department should develop a mentorship program for elementary age children, grades 4 through 6, to be presented by police officers of color, both men and women, from the Elgin Police Department. This program will differ from the Explorer program in that it will present children with different scenarios regarding police, when to call the police, when not to call. This program would also serve to gather feedback from the children about their perspective about the police and any experiences they may have had, good or bad.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved in second for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Shaw.
Just a couple of questions for you, Chief, on this one. Right now, I know that we have school resource officers in both the high school and the middle school. This is at the elementary school. Could you just provide just like a quick synopsis of our engagement with the elementary school?
So the middle school SROs take care of their feeder schools, so they liaison with the elementary school. So what we would do is have those conversations with U46. Again, I'll talk to the superintendent and see how we can incorporate some type of program. Again, being respectful and mindful of their curriculum, their time, and the needs.
My next question, does that school resource officer have the capacity to add into that as well? I mean, it's almost like creating a kids club within each elementary school.
It depends. I mean, that's something that I'll discuss with the superintendent. You know, what are the parameters? If it's something that it's a 1-hour program, is it, something after school, before school, at a lunchtime? I mean, I think there's ways that we can work around the time constraints to make it beneficial for everybody.
Okay, and I'm just trying to be cognizant that we've talked about resourcing already within department, and so if the school resource officer in their current role has the ability to fulfill this, I'll be in favor of that. If it's not, where it's going to cause other staffing challenges, then I was not going to be in favor.
Yeah, we would, our school resource officers would be the first point of contact, but then again, we might have other officers who could fulfill this role. We have a very young department, and it's a great opportunity for them to get involved in the community and start meeting community members. And so it might be something that we say this task is not specific to school resource officers, but rather our patrol division. So we have a lot of resources, an hour here, an hour there, especially for something that's meaningful. We'll find the time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you. I would just like to point out that there's programming already happening inside of School District U46 on their own through the Brothers Rise Up program, which is ran by Jim Cook, and he does a really great job of working with the middle school kids. So maybe there's an opportunity to expand through that. We also have the Youth Empowerment Program, which is now more focused on the high schools. But maybe there's some opportunity for those two organizations to partner, or one way or the other, so that we can get to those elementary school kids. So I just wanted to put that out there as an idea. And since it's a program and it's a general statement, it doesn't give any specifications on the way that it can run. You'll then have the prerogative to say, well, based on the availability of my officers, I suggest we do a 30-minute program or a 3-hour program, right? So that's your prerogative. We're not figuring it out for you, right? Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Rauschenberg.
Yeah, and just a reminder, and I'm sure Chief is cognizant of this, as are the SROs, but anything presented to children today, it needs to be evidence-based to understand what, this is a suggestion 4 to 6. Maybe it's 3 to 6, maybe it's, and that there must be programs out there to use, because it is a sensitive subject. So just to make everyone aware, it's not only availability of officers, but developing a program that would be appropriate for our school children.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberg,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Dorn,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0. Item 4 is the City of Elgin and Elgin Police Department should allocate a minimum of $10,000 from the Elgin Police Department's budget to develop a high-functioning transparency website via a third-party Elgin-based agency with the goal of making it a more user and mobile-friendly website.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve this, but amending it to remove the dollar amount minimum.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
I heard.
Yeah, I second.
Yep. It's been moved and seconded. I would agree.
Yeah.
You don't price things like that. Mr. Shaw.
Just a quick, my assumption is we are using a third party, we're not doing that in-house, correct?
So there's this recommendation, just to kind of give a quick background. Our Transparency Hub, which has been up and running for 2 years now, tons of information on there. The feedback that we got specifically in the task force meetings it's not user-friendly to use on a smart device, your phone. That being said, last year we started working on developing an app for smartphones where a lot of the information from the transparency site will be accessible on your smartphone. We intend to release that app within the next week here. We're done. We are going to push that out to the community, specifically to task force members, say, give us your feedback. So I think we're going to be able to, I think this will be done. So it's something that it was brought, as soon as we released our Transparency Hub, that was the feedback that I kept getting from community members. And so we already knew we needed to do something.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
So if that's all,
Mr.
sorry.
Good?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't mean to get too in the weeds here, but since you're already open with the data, has there been any consideration of opening up the API, which is basically feeding all that information to other apps within the organizations? Because to frame that, I've asked if we would consider that as an organization as a whole to become like an open data government, open the API to developers, whether it be in this community or elsewhere. So more specifically in your department, has that conversation ever come up?
So I think if I'm understanding you correctly, because I'm not specific, I don't know what API is. If that's the source data that you're asking for us to release?
It's kind of like if you go to a restaurant, it's the server. So the kitchen has all the data,
Yes.
the API, and right now,
Yes.
there's a lot of people in this community that use that and make user-friendly apps. So I'm just
So
curious if that's been discussed.
the only issue with our data would be, so for example, in our Transparency Hub, when we put out calls for service and the locations, we have to modify that data to give the 800 block, 100 block, so you don't give specific addresses.
Correct.
So for us just to say here, the community can have that specific information, there's some sensitivity issues, there's obviously some legal issues. So I think most everything of what people want to see and want to know, they're seeing. So I would not be comfortable giving them that kind of source.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Address level is not,
Yes.
you could use
Yes.
a
But I
block
think,
level.
the point of releasing the app too is to get people's feedback, and if there's something that we need, because we're still building it. That's what we did with the transparency site. We released it, and we got tons of feedback, and we added new things, changed things, made it more user-friendly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Ms. Powell?
Thank you. So just for clarification, Chief, you guys did the modifications that you're speaking of that will be coming forward in-house, or did you use an outside agency?
We used an outside vendor, so our IT department worked with the city's ID department, and then we also had an outside vendor that came in and helped us. I think it was under 20,000. I don't know the exact number offhand, but we did that last year.
Great. And then your goal is to, before you go completely live with that, to kind of share it back with the task force members to kind of test it out?
We would release it to everyone. We would release it to the community. We would release the app to everyone, and then get that feedback and start doing modifications, adding things. Because if we're going to do it, we're going to do it all in one shot.
Okay. So I guess my question, we've made the motion, but obviously this is something that's just like with several of the other things on the list. There are already things in place or in the process. We can approve it as a show of, I think, support for what the police department is doing, but just with the recognition that I was definitely against mandating a dollar amount, because we don't necessarily know what that's going to cost. But I was glad to hear that we already recognized that there was a problem and some challenges, and we're already working towards correcting those. So I'll keep the motion as it is, just with the understanding that it's forthcoming. It was already in process.
Mr. Dixon?
Chief, out of curiosity, and I apologize if you may have said this already, but did you do a versus situation in seeing what it costs to create this app versus what it would cost to just update the website to make it more user-friendly on a mobile device? Did you all do that analysis, and what did you find?
We did, and we would not be able to, the way the Transparency Hub is set up, it's more for a desktop. And so we kind of vetted out that information, and, even now, if you pull up the Transparency Hub on your smartphone, you can't even read it. I mean, you can read some things, but what you really want to do is drill down on some of the data. It doesn't allow for that on a smaller device. So we did do that analysis.
Okay, all right, that's all I needed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Item 5 is the Elgin Police Department should adjust the job description of every school resource officers and community liaison, if applicable, employed by the department to work alongside the administration of their assigned educational institution to create a school resource advisory board made up of students. This school resource advisory board is to meet regularly throughout the academic school year, either during the school day or after school, to provide students with an opportunity to address any concerns regarding safety, bullying, and/or mental health issues impacting them and their classmates. And again, this is one that we discussed about redirecting back to the school district.
Move for approval.
Second.
Move the second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Item 6 is the Elgin City Council should hire a third-party business and/or assign members of the Elgin Police Department to analyze externally and internally Elgin Police Department's existing departments to ensure accurate staffing is being allocated per department sector and/or the need to expand into other departments or sectors, i.e. cold case departments, in-house labs, etc.
Move for approval.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Ms. Ms. Powell, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Chief, can you speak to some of the work you're already doing in this area? Because I know that we're currently in the process of undergoing a staffing study in the police department, and I'm not sure, I can't remember if it was just internal, if it was being done with internal staff, or if you had contracted with a third party. And I believe as part of our 2023 budget, we did allocate money to basically kind of start up a cold case unit.
Yes, so one of the, when the council approved for the additional officers, one of those officers will be transitioned into our major investigations division to start that cold case unit. The recently conducted staffing study was done by our crime analysts, and from that information, I recently reduced one of our groups, our special investigations group. We reduced that by 3 officers. We pushed those officers back into patrol. So we're going to continue to do, and as I mentioned in the memorandum, if it's something where we think we need to hire an outside consultant to come in and take a look at the staffing needs, then that's something we'll explore. As of now, just based upon our internal data, wants of the community, things that we need to address, we're going to do that continual assessment and see if we need to make some modifications.
So you said that this was done by your crime analysts?
Correct.
Does this person have a specific background in kind of analyzing, staffing studies? Because I know, there is a science, there's a method to the madness.
Yeah, there is, and there's also a very simplistic way of looking at some of the units as well, based on, and he does, it's Ryan Drake, you did meet him. He's a statistician, he knows how to look at data, analyze it. Specifically, we looked at calls, arrest rates, clearance rates for cases. And it's not just the numbers that you're looking at, it's also looking at, how many calls of a certain type are we getting? Are we needing more detectives because we're having more cases that require more time? So that kind of analysis it's not just numbers, but it's also the internal conversations that we have with supervisory staff. What are the needs of your department? For example, we just added a forensic detective. So for the last 15 years, we've had one detective who handles the Gray Key software that you guys just approved tonight. That's something that she uses to do forensic analysis on computers, phones. Probably almost every case that we get in has some type of technological component to it. So knowing that how much work that she had, we just recently brought a new detective into that unit. That detective, the amount of training that he will have to go through is extensive. And so it will probably take a good 2 years for that detective working with the one who is there to get up to speed. So eventually when people leave, that it can be someone's there to do the work. So that kind of constant, what do we need? What's the workload? What are the needs of the community? We created CCSU because we knew that we were getting a lot of calls for mental health. So we do have those conversations. And again, if it's something that we need to go to a third party and we need to expend some funds to do that, then that's a conversation that we can have towards the end of next year.
How did best practices come into play in looking at the staffing model?
So best practices, and again, it depends what the department, for example, CCSU, mental health, creating a mental health unit. We did that well before the best practice now because of the Safety Act is to have, officers respond to mental health. So that's part of the command staff's job, to be aware of the trends, to be aware of what the departmental needs, to be aware of what the community is asking for. The cold case, a lot of larger departments have a cold case division. And as I said, that's something that's very important to me to give closure to the families of victims. I think that that's sometimes forgotten a lot. And so, that's something that the department has talked about for years. And so finally, being able to do that, it's going to be a great benefit for the community.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Martinez.
I would just like to comment that this is like a lesson learned that with the task force that was created and with the time that it took, the time of the task force, the time of the public, the time of everybody, your time, staff, everybody, I wish as a lesson learned, we would go ahead and first meet with you, whether it's a consultant, anybody, because I think that would have saved a lot of time because you're the new chief of police, and really I wonder if not so new, about almost 5 years, but if people would have just sat down and got to know what the police department does, we would have saved so much time. Things that are happening are things that, you're already working on. I'm amazed at things that were brought up that people didn't realize were already happening, And at this time, I would also like to take time to thank the task force members that stuck it out because it did go on for a long time. No fault of theirs. I mean, who was going to think? But the chair, Charles Horton, and vice chair, Ish Cordova, and Shimon Blanchard, Bishop Walter Blaylark, Carol Bailey, Corey Battles, Joshua Brockaway, Tish Calamer, Aubrey Flickema, Denise Haven, and Cynthia Rivera. Thank you so much, honestly, for all the work that you put in. But I think these are, I've always said, try something, let it fail because it was a bad idea, but don't let it fail because we didn't try it at all. And I think with that, this is a lesson that we have to learn. If you're going to go ahead and be in a committee in anything, I think people need to be have the conversation to at least know what it is that you do, what have you done, because I've said it many, many times, Chief. Since you came in, you have implemented so many things. You put our police department years ahead of other police departments, and I just think that people sometimes don't realize it or know it, But we're a progressive police department, and I've always said, not perfect. There's always room for improvement anywhere, but thank you for that, and thank you to the police force. To the police task force. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, Ms. Powell, very quick.
Yes, I also want to, again, thank the task force for all of their work. Just want to piggyback on something my colleague, Councilwoman Martinez said. I think people want to be heard, and I think that's where the task force came in. There were many, many conversations that the task force had during the course of the year that we met, during the conversations that we had with the police chief and her team that complemented the police department on the work that they have been doing, are currently doing, and the changes that people have seen them make. So it definitely was not, a completely adversarial process that we had. I think very rarely was it adversarial between the task force and the police department, because there was a lot of, hey, this is going well. We appreciate and we see the progress that is being made. However, there are these things over here that concern us that we still need to address. So I don't want to minimize the importance of the things that the task force members and members of the community wanted to have addressed as part of the task force and ultimately came forward with the recommendations. I don't want to minimize those things at all, because we still, even after going through the ones that we have tonight, we've effectively gone through quite a few of the recommendations, but the two meatiest ones, so to speak, are the ones that are left. Those are the ones that are quite major, probably with the most disagreement here and there in different places. So, yeah, we're getting probably a lot of the easy stuff out of the way now. But I don't want to discount the time, the effort, the energy, the compliments, the acknowledgement of the good work that the police department has done. That doesn't go away just because the task force has said that there are still some areas that need to be worked on. I think that was brought up by the Center for Policing Equity when they came here. And it was also brought up and acknowledged by the task force. So I just want to make that very clear to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0. Item 7 is all eligible residents who are stopped by and/or interact with the police for nonviolent offenses and are struggling with any of the following issues: homelessness, housing insecurity, substance abuse disorders, or behavioral health, be referred immediately to the Kane County Pre-Arrest Diversion Program. The commander responsible for this department is to update the council on how many of arrests were avoided by referring residents to this program. Likewise, the report should also include how many residents were not eligible for this program and the reason for ineligibility.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first one really that I have a challenge with, because to me, police are still have to follow the law. And if someone breaks the law, regardless of the reason or their situation, I think that, to me, that could be addressed in a different manner or later. I'm gone along with a lot of these things of the recommendations of the task force. I'm proud of our police department and how they operate, but I just have a challenge with this one, so I won't be supporting it.
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you. Chief, we've had some conversations about this program, the pre-arrest diversion program, which we actually need to strike that from the record. It's not called pre-arrest diversion anymore. It's called Kane County Collaborative Diversion Program. I know this because I supervised the program along the side of State's Attorney Jamie Mosser. The program, we're already referring people, is my understanding. We've been doing this since the inception of the program, probably it's been about a year now, I think it's been. EPD is actually one of the pilot departments for the program. It's one of the first police departments to actually step up and say, hey, use us and we'll work with our officers to do it. And it hasn't been great, but it has definitely paid some dividends. And when we talk about countywide, There are the two largest entities in the county is the city of Elgin and well, I'm just going to say the city of Elgin, because a lot of the arrests that end up at the Kane County Jail come from residents of Elgin, unfortunately, but that is the case. But as a result of the program, the people who are in this program, they have substance abuse issues. It's not a mindset of criminality that you may be thinking of when you're thinking about these folks. It's actually people who are dealing with addiction issues, and it's a very low-level crimes. It's not assaults. It's not batteries. We're talking about drug and alcohol use mostly. So I just want to be clear about what we're talking about, and also just point out that we're already doing it, and we've already been doing it now for a year, if not more, at the police department. So I just want you to consider that in your vote or your support for this program, is that the officers are already doing it. The ones that really enjoy this I guess this new mindset of policing, they're really leaning into it, and it's paying dividends not just here in Elgin, but throughout the county, because now there are multiple departments that have signed up for the program who work with the state's attorney's office and the sheriff's office as a result of the work of the chief and our officers here. So just want to give all that context.
Just a comment from me. I was attended the first meetings when they brought this idea to Kane County, and sat in with the state's attorney and the representatives. I believe the initial program came out of Washington, the state of Washington. And Elgin was the first in this area to adopt this program. At that time, I said, it's to intercept people that are kind of wobbly, and they can get them back maybe on track. And I thought everybody deserves a second chance, and I thought that this program was worth a chance. I've been following it, and it seems like it's had some good results. So I'm going to support this, and I think it's beneficial to our community to do it, and I think it gives people a second chance, and if they backslide, there's some penalties for that as well for them. So just my support. Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree, because what told me, it says all eligible residents and that interact with the police for nonviolent offenses, and that's why they're being sent to a different division. And again, this is something that happened, I think, in your time, something that is recent, and I think it's a good idea, because we sometimes spend a lot of resources on things that we even shouldn't be dealing with. So this is something that I'm going to support as well. Thank you.
Ms. Powell.
Thank you. I want to focus specifically on what I believe I heard from the task force when they were making this recommendation. They support the program. Their concern is that it didn't appear that a lot of people were being referred to the program. There's data in the memo that specifically states that 21 referrals had been made from about 207 eligible offenses. So it says eligible offenses. I don't know if that necessarily translates into eligible persons, but if it does, that's roughly about 10% of the folks eligible to be referred to the program. Only 10% were referred. So I just want to hear from you, what are we doing in-house to really ensure that as many people as are actually eligible for this program and meet the guidelines and criteria? Because as Councilman Dixon said, there's specific criteria that you have to meet. It's not violent crime, people who have committed violent crimes. It's certain criteria. For the people who do meet that criteria, how are we working with our officers to make sure that the folks that are eligible are actually being funneled into this program? Because that's the whole point of the program.
When that conversation came up, and I think it was when I gave my my response to the recommendations, we did talk about that. And the task force, it's exactly the spirit of what you're saying. Why are not many people being referred. And at that time, and I will still continue, I'll just say the same answer that I gave then. We started the program, we piloted in 2019, 2020, it doesn't really pick up until the fall of 2021, and we really don't start doing much until about 2022. So implementation, policies in place, we had to write a policy, there's a lot of things that we had to do. Then it's training for the officers, which all the officers have received training, and they continue to receive training. It's absolutely what Councilman Dixon said, which is a mindset, it's a shift of leaning into this way of policing. That takes a little bit of time, and so we've had those conversations specifically with, I've talked with Sergeant Regano of our Collaborative Crisis Services Unit, of having more of a checks and balances of, when reports are coming in, is there a way to do something to divert into the program? So there's some learning curve on our end too, and it's also making sure that the officers are, understanding the benefits of the program. And policing, I've seen a lot of things in my career, and sometimes, you implement a program, and it takes a little bit of time. CCSU, it took us a good 3 years for, the officers to understand the benefit of that. ESD, that's the tactical component of CCSU. It took a good 2-3 years, and there's some skepticism, and you have to explain and show and prove. And so the goal of us giving the reports to the city council, the quarterly reports, so that you guys can get that feedback. The first report will be made available to you in April of 2012 this year. That way, there's some stuff that we have to do on our end, continuous training, philosophy, getting, some checks and balances, maybe frontline supervisors, maybe stepping in. We're going to have to do some things and have been working on some things, but it will take a little bit of time. It's not just here's this program and everyone's on board and everyone's going to love it. It doesn't work like that in the police department. It takes a tipping point for real change is about 5 or 6 years. I'm not going to say that it's not going to be 5 or 6 years, but 5 or 6 years is when you push, and then the tipping point comes where it becomes our philosophy. So it's not going to take us that long, though, but give us a little bit of time.
Definitely hope that, definitely sooner rather than later, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Thorne.
Thank you. Well, I've been enlightened, and especially Mr. Dixon and the explanations. I guess part of it was, as I read through the details, and it said, for instance, housing insecurity, substance use disorder, it touched me because my concern was I was the victim of a home invasion about 20 years ago, and they caught him later, but the next thing you know, he was incarcerated for a relatively short period of time, and then he's out. But I didn't get any of my stuff back, including some family heirlooms, using my great-grandma's pillows to put stuff in that were hand-crocheted. And I think, well, that's nonviolent, but it certainly was something I'll never forget. And that's why I'm thinking of the law here. I understand some of these changes now in policing with counseling actions and how it can affect people and how it can keep people, improve people's lives. I guess you did answer part of what I was going to ask was time frame. I guess I would like to ask you just your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Your opinion of the program, not just statistics.
Sure.
I mean, I think everyone can see a little bit with the situation of the way I'm seeing it, reading about it, and what's happened to me. It's hard for me to say that person deserves to be arrested.
So I see the benefits of the program, and I see it, from a police officer perspective, but I also have experience, and I'll just give an example. So when I was a detective in the drug unit, and I did drug work for almost 7 years, 6.5, 7 years. sometimes the people that I was purchasing narcotics from, they weren't dealers, they were users. And so what they were doing is they were selling to support their habit. So what would happen is in instances where they don't have a lengthy criminal history, there's a huge difference between people who are in illegal narcotics, dealing, selling. That's a whole nother scenario, and that's not what this program is meant for. But I would quite often, depending on, you would get some scenarios where, people are involved in drug sales to support their habit, to support their family. They get arrested. And prior to this, the court does still have a diversion program where people get arrested and then they're diverted to drug court. That's been in place for many, many years. So quite frequently, the state's attorney would call and say, this person, you guys arrested them, delivery, it's a felony. Based on their background, their criminal history, it seems to appear that they have a drug issue, a substance abuse problem, so we want to divert them into drug court. What's your opinion? And at that point, they asked us. And so we would, do kind of a check down list. What's their history? Is this the 7th time that this person has been arrested? And they say, well, it's because I have a user problem. At some point you say, okay, enough, right? But if you can articulate, and there's truly cases where people need help, and the goal is so that the officers don't continue to have contact with people who are involved in criminal activity when it's, solely based on a need, whether it's they need to support their habit, they need to support their family, they need to support somewhere to live. So I have seen it firsthand, and how some people who are involved in some criminal activity, and it's not because they want to, it's because there's a need. So when this, I brought this in front of the council, the pre-arrest diversion program, with the state's attorney a couple of years ago. And that was one of the things that she stressed, and I also stressed. This is not meant for violent offenders. This is not meant for violent felony offenses. We do quite often divert prior to this program. So my opinion is it's the right circumstances, the right case. It's not everything is if this, then that, and then go into the program. You have to do a thorough analysis. You have to understand the background. And also, if there are people who are engaged in criminal activity and officers keep going to calls for service and keep responding and keep taxing the officers, their time, the community, instead of pushing someone into a program where they can get help and where we reduce our contact and then in essence reduce the taxpayers' money of the amount spent of officers spending time on the same call over and over again. So it has to be the right case. It has to be, that vetting process has to be done. You have to ensure that, if there are victims, victims are, these are victimless crimes. So if, for your case, your example, right, somebody home invades your residence, you're a victim. So your voice needs to be the most loudest in that process. And so that was also what I said, is that we don't want to join a program or have a program where the victim then becomes voiceless. That's not what this is, right? So there's a balance. There's a balance of the right cases, people who are ready to receive help, and then people saying, well, here's the help. And it has worked. And then there are some instances where this wouldn't even be an option. So I don't like to look at things of just, it's just this or it's this. There's a lot involved in this, and so that's what the officers do, working with the state's attorney's office to ensure that the right people are being referred, and that victims still have a voice, and that people still feel a sense of justice if they are a victim. So that's my we could talk for 2 hours on it, but that's my opinion on it.
Thank you. I guess you can still see my point, my side. I mean, it's emotion is involved, and that's why it would be hard for me to say, oh, well, he didn't get arrested because he's a user and he just stole his stuff so he could sell it and then get his fix, and it's okay. Well,
Yeah, no, I'm not, and that's not what I'm saying. So
No.
I want to be clear, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm
But
saying
that's-
is that from a professional perspective and a police officer who's actually been in an interview room with someone who you purchased narcotics from, and not many people can say they've done that. And you sit in a room with someone and you hear their life story and you know exactly why they did what they did, and it has nothing to do with wanting to victimize people, They're literally selling narcotics to support their family. And then, or some people have a drug habit and they've never been offered help. In those instances, yes, you can make the arrest in most of those cases, and I think that's something that needs to, most cases where people are arrested for felony offenses for possession, no one is going to prison. A very small number of people actually go to prison for possession offenses. So, it's also, what is the benefit that we're trying to do? Are we trying to get help for people so that then they don't reoffend, which then reduces people who being victims? Or are we just going to continue to push people through the system? When there are some offenses where you absolutely need to go to prison, 100%. But in some of these cases, and again, they're minor offenses, and that's something that I want to stress because to the community, and I said that, people need to be held accountable. There needs to be checks and balances, but we also need to understand the philosophy of policing, which has absolutely changed. And if you don't understand that or don't see that or think that there's going to be always resistance, that's not what's going to make the community better. It's to find that balance.
Ms. Rauschenberger.
No, I just want to say thank you for your candor in discussing how making a policy change doesn't always happen overnight. And I think we all need to remember that. And police officers are human beings, and any group of people that have to make some big change in their job doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
thank you.
appreciate that.
Mr. Shaw.
Just a quick question. In the recommendation, it says all eligible residents. In practice, is it really, in the way that you would like to see this implemented, I mean, do you agree that it really is all eligible, or is it, there's a level of analysis that an officer will always go through to do that? Okay.
Yeah,
That makes
this
sense.
was exactly what the task force recommended.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was exactly
Yeah,
their wording.
okay.
But there is an analysis
There's
that,
a level of analysis in the
absolutely,
implementation
and that has
of
to
this.
be
Okay,
done,
okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Dixon.
I would like to point out that you don't have to be a resident to participate in the program.
Correct.
You also, too, if someone is in charge, and it's just for your comfort, Councilman Thorne, if someone commits a crime behind use, it doesn't eliminate all paths to retrieve, because you still have the civil side of things, if, in the example that you gave. So it may alleviate the criminal side, but as was already pointed out, they're not going to be held in jail long, and certainly probably not even prison. So I just wanted to point that out. And you and I have had the conversation about the program and, how do we get more people referred into the program? And it's not just on your side, which is officer discretion and education.
Mm-hmm.
It's also doing more education, from the state's attorney's office, from the program into the community too as well, which is a continual rollout here over time. But I wonder, and I've posed this question to you before, and we just haven't had a full conversation about it, is what measures or metrics can we put in place to, I'm going to say, empower officers to make more recommendations into the program? Is there any way for you as chief to encourage that positive behavior?
Yeah, I mean, that is, it's more of an awareness thing, because we did have that conversation. I can't, as the chief say, if you refer to the pre-arrest program, you're going to get a comp day, right? Because
Right.
now you're directing the officer's behaviors, and that's where you start getting into.
And that wasn't my suggestion.
No.
Okay,
I'm using
all
that
right.
as an example. You did not, but this is as an example. I'm not able to do that because now you're venturing into favoritism, discriminatory practices. Is there some type of unfavorable? So it's just more of us and the department, more training, more awareness, trying to figure out if there's some safeguards that we could put in place for reports to be looked at. And it's a work in progress, but it is a different shift in philosophy, and that's something that the community needs to understand, that these are not violent offenses. There's an assessment that takes place. This type of kind of outcome was already available in diversion programs after people got arrested. This is just prior to them entering into the formal system. There's still ways that if they don't complete the program, that we can go back and push them into the formal criminal justice system. So I can't really direct an officer to say, do this, and then this is what will happen. It's just for us to continue training, awareness, and change some of the philosophy that it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So-
Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Motion is approved 9-0, yes. This brings us to the last item. I want to apologize to the people who have been waiting here patiently. We're going to try to get this wrapped up, and then we'll move on to the committee of the whole. We're going to take a short break. Move on to the regular council meeting. We'll take a short break. Hopefully, we'll get this and get you your opportunities here by 8 o'clock. Item 8, the Elgin Police Department's police officers should participate in training surrounding engagement and identifying potential biases regarding the following communities: LGBTQ community, individuals living with HIV and other communicable diseases, and the undocumented immigrant community.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to amend this recommendation as follows. Direct the police department to work directly with the Center for Policing Equity to identify and address potential biases in policing in our community.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to have the police department work with the
Center.
Center for Policing Equity on these issues. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Shaw.
I guess this is a recommendation from the task force. If you want that recommendation, I guess that's a separate one to me. I mean, you're trying to, we're trying to transition something that's A into something completely that's a B. To be honest with you, this recommendation myself is I understand what the task force is going after some additional biases. I guess my feeling was that there's so many, the training that we already have already encompasses this. So, you know, it's in flight, I guess, is how I'm viewing that at this point in time. The piece that was amended, to me, is a completely different topic and conversation that probably warrants its own conversation in and of itself, that will probably take quite a bit longer. So I guess I would recommend that we go back to the original recommendation that was here before us, and if we're looking to do something more with the statistics received from both NIU and the Centers for Policing Equity, I think that's probably a much broader and longer conversation for later tonight or another night. That's up to the group as a whole.
Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I also just wanted to point out on the LGBTQIA+ community. Chief, I had asked you this before, but just to announce it again, wasn't there like a national recognition that you got for something like this, for how, I can't remember what the recognition was, but it was a national recognition. It's already
Correct.
something that you have been working with. That, and then with the undocumented immigrant community, I remember your department was very instrumental when concerns were brought up about a sanctuary city, and we had a church that was just full of people that were very concerned about that. That's something where you guys were very instrumental in helping with that. But what was that award that you won?
So the award that you're talking about is through the COPS office, which is a community of, it's actually in our annual report, so you'll see it. That award that we received, we were one of 12 departments that submitted a photo that showed our community engagement outside the traditional community, what you would see in a police department. And it was
Nationally.
it was a national award, and it was for our police vehicle that we, every year in June, we wrap a squad for Pride Month. And so And we started that in 2019. And so we did do training in 2019 specifically with that community. We will continue to do training. It's no different than we talked about training for people, autism awareness. So, that was something that Councilwoman Rauschenberger had talked about. And so we started doing an annual autism event, and, that's exploded too. So I think, the spirit of this and the conversations with the task force, it was to continue that type of training, making sure that, it's very specific. So we do cover some of these topics in our fair and impartial training that we do every 2 years. But the spirit of the conversation was it wasn't enough. And I agree. So just making sure that we get people to come in and train. There are a lot of standards that we have to meet. So in the memo, I said we have to look for training classes, ensure that it's compliant with the Illinois Training and Standards Board. The more training, the better. So I think that was more of the spirit, was do more and be more specific about those communities, which I think is all good. There's there to learn more about another community. And to have that knowledge so that officers know how to be appropriate in certain circumstances, or ask the right questions, or not be offensive, that's all good stuff.
Okay, thank you. So now, Mayor, I'm just kind of confused because it seems like there's two things that were brought up. One is to include the CPE report, and the other one is not to just vote on what we have here.
The motion was to amend the motion to, or amend it to direct the police department to work with the Center for Policing Equity. And I'm going to raise the question for Ms. Powell. Have you talked to them and they're doing this for free?
Yes, there's no charge
Okay.
from the Center for Policing
Okay,
Equity.
so they'd be
because
willing
they're
to
a
consult and do
nonprofit.
this for free?
Yes, and if I could clarify, I'm not saying I disagree with what's being recommended in terms of working on identifying potential or training around the LGBTQIA community, HIV community, all of that. We're talking about biases, and that's what, the Center for Policing Equity is dealing with, identifying biases in our policing and taking the further step of making recommendations on how we could address those biases and correct them. Not dressing up a police car, which is great, not trying to minimize that. I think that is a way to acknowledge our recognition and support of those communities. But doing the police car doesn't address the bias or potential bias that our officers may have towards different communities. I made the amended motion to say, I want a professional organization like the Center for Policing Equity that has that background to help us identify where we have bias and how do we correct it. So that was where my motion comes from. It's not to change and eliminate what's here. It is to identify what biases might exist in other communities. In particular, the one we spoke most about during the task force was, and what the Center for Policing Equity brought up when they were here, was bias in the African American community in policing. That needs, and then the other portion of this I'll point out is the fair and impartial policing training that's noted here. I know we've had that in place for a while. I don't know when the last time was that was validated and that we've looked at, does it need to be changed? Is there a different instrument out there that we should be using? That's all stuff that we need to look at, because I know we have this in place and we've had it in place for a while, but is it really the best tool that we should be using? Hence the reason for my amended motion.
Question for the manager. Are you still working on having the Center for Policing Equity come back to a council at a future time, correct?
There is an invitation for the Center for Policing Equity to return. They have not responded to that invite yet.
Okay. Because my preference would be to talk to them when they come back and review what their ideas are, what their plans are, and I'll get some more information from them as to how we see, because it's kind of assuming they're going to do this, assuming they can, what their vision is for this, I think I'd like to hear more before I would vote on this. That would be, that. I can't support it with them coming back here in a short time. I would rather talk to them before I would vote on something like this. So, Ms. Martinez, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Agreed. I just wanted a point of information. When the CPE status was given to CPE, wasn't it like before 2018 data? From what time to, wasn't that 2014 to 2018 or something?
Yeah, so specific data was 2014 through 2019.
19.
And then some were 2016 to 2019, the usable data.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it should be something that we should discuss at a different time once they're here. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dixon, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I'm in support of the recommendation from the task force. And I also understand where Councilwoman Powell is coming from in making her recommendation, and I'm in support of that too. And I'm not trying to pile on here, but I'll just take this opportunity to point out that the HRC, the Human Relations Commission, used to do a municipal index that included the LGBTQ plus, and that was organizational wide and not just on the police department. I've only been a liaison for a couple of years now, and that was done prior to the pandemic. But we actually have the chair, Winfred Cooper, here, and the past chair, Denise Haben, here, and they were around when these indexes occurred. And so maybe that this conversation provides an opportunity for us to bring that back to the HRC. And I believe that was one of your officers that was, managing that. And it doesn't have to be, but that's a recommendation if you wish, Chairman Cooper, if you would like to bring that back to the HRC. I think that would be a good thing to do. And we're not just focusing solely on our police department, but the entire organization, and making sure that we are straight across the board and not just at the police department. So that's where I'll leave my comment. Thank you.
Mr. Good.
Just to comment on this, because we're now looking at two different things. Again, support the initial recommendation. As for the amendment, my brief 30-minute experience with CPE did not leave me feeling confident to just move forward in this moment and direct our staff to work with an organization who, in my opinion, treated a very important subject somewhat flippantly. And I understand the sentiment of wanting to evaluate implicit, explicit biases and having a serious discussion about that. But personally, I'm not comfortable moving forward with that amendment, so unfortunately, I won't be able to support that tonight.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to amend this to include the Center for Policing Equity to work with the Elgin Police Department. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
No.
Martinez,
No.
Powell,
Yes?
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
No. No.
Steffen,
No.
Thorne,
No.
Mayor Captain.
No, the motion fails 6-3. That brings us back to the original presentation or promotion, proposal from the Policing Commission. And we would need now a motion on that.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval to review and approve the original recommendation from the commission. Ms. Powell.
Just clarification, I did bring up the fair and impartial policing training that you're currently doing. When is the last time that we've evaluated that instrument and had it validated?
So Fair and Impartial Policing, the organization that runs it, the creator is a doctor. She created the program. There isn't any other program similar to what they teach. We recently went through a training session There are 7 members of the police department, including myself, who are trainers. We went through an update because we're getting ready to do our refresh starting in February of this year. So when you look at what Fair and Impartial trains, it's proprietary information. It costs a lot of money to get people trained. They are scientific studies. The process is vetted out. It's created by a doctor. There is nothing that is similar to that type of training available to police departments, which is why it's proprietary. It costs a lot of money, and a lot of police departments don't send 7 or 8 people to be trainers. Prior to us, it used to be myself, Dan Rouse, and 2 other trainers, and the 4 of us, and at one point there were more trainers, but people left, and so we just incorporated a new batch of people who will be here in the future. So in my professional opinion, that is the best training that we're receiving that's available to police departments. Now, you can get a modified version of some type of Fair and Impartial. Fair and Impartial hits on everything from procedural justice to bias to implicit bias to studies. It's very robust. One of the things in working with one of the task force members, Josh Brockway, he's not here, but one of the things that we want to do is also provide some part of that training, Fair and Impartial, to the community, and so invite people, starting with council members and people who have been on the task force. That's something that's in the works as well. That training will cost about $4,000 for Fair and Impartial to come out here and do a 4-hour block to community members. I cannot train Fair and Impartial outside of the police department because they do not allow us to do that. We sign memorandums of understanding saying that we won't go to other police departments and train for free. So it is, in my opinion, just knowing what type of training is out there and reading and understanding what's going on in the profession, this is the top notch. And that's why it costs a lot, and that's why, because these questions are asked. Who are these people? What's the training? How often do they update, the material? And all of that, I think if you never sat through the training, it's hard to understand the layers of what is taught, which is why I wanted to bring it to the community so people can see it. And doing a 4-hour block, the trainers, we initially went through 16 hours of training, then we go through an 8-hour refresh. We just did that a few months ago. So I can look, I can provide you with what else is out there, but it's not going to be, there is not an equivalent to this. But if you'd like me to provide you with those sources, I can do that.
That would be helpful, because I know that it's been a while since we've had this, and I understand that it's refreshed every now and then, but there's also new things that come out, other best practices, because this has been a big issue, and I just want to make sure that we are really evaluating the training and the instruments that we're using to make sure that we're using the best that's out there. That's all I'm asking, to make sure that we are doing on a consistent basis.
Anything else? We have a motion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Steffen?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, the motion is approved 9-1. Announcements from the council. Mr. Thorne.
Yes, I'd like to let everybody know that next Monday, on Martin Luther King Day, I'm very proud to say I will be conducting a special program on WRMN, a tribute to Floyd Brown. It's going to be his impact from Martin Luther King to the impact of Elgin. Guests will be Betty Brown and Keith Brown. It's on at 9:15 in the morning on WRMN. I hope you'll all tune in.
Announcements from staff.
Just one, Mayor. Members of the public may know that the intersection of Big Timber Road and McLean Boulevard has been shut down since last afternoon at 4:30 because of a gas leak in a Nicor main at that location. Chief Sagan and the fire department officials have been on the scene throughout the evening through today. There's emergency work that's being performed by Nicor now, and there's an expectation that that intersection will be open by tomorrow. The fire department has been working with affected businesses to provide access to the degree that it can without impacting public safety, but there's hope for resolution by midday tomorrow.
Thank you. It's important to me. Ms. Powell, real quick.
Yes, an announcement regarding the City of Elgin's 38th Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration that's taking place this weekend. Although the prayer breakfast tickets have been sold out, there is a feature film that will be taking place for Sunday. On Sunday, you can go online and reserve free tickets for a documentary. And the documentary is, see the name of it really quick, Invented Before You Were Born. And it follows the story of some siblings, white siblings, who discover they are the descendants of Kentucky slave owner that have reconnected with some of their African-American descendants from that plantation as well. And our own Tracy O'Neill Ellis, her family is part of that family. So there'll be a panel discussion afterwards. If you go on the website, you can download your ticket from Eventbrite. There's no charge. And the film is taking place at Larkin High School on Sunday, January 15th. Thank you.
Mr. Malat has an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to share with City Council that the first community meeting for the North Grove Redevelopment Area Plan will be taking place Tuesday, January 24th at the Center of Elgin in the ballroom from 6 to 8. The project team is going to introduce the project, the planning processes, and facilitate interactive stations to solicit input into the vision and program for each of the 3 sites. So just wanted to share that with you. We're pushing out information on the website through Facebook, and also wanted to thank you for promulgating the survey. We are ecstatic to report that with still 3 weeks left open in the survey, we've had over 340 responses to the survey that was sent out. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and second to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, we are adjourned. We'll reconvene at the regular council meeting at 8:15. Finding your seats, please. Meeting of the Elgin City Council for January 11th, 2023 to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Dixon,
Present.
Good,
Here.
Martinez,
Here.
Powell,
Here.
Rauschenberger,
Here.
Shaw,
Here.
Stefan,
Here.
Thorne,
Here.
Mayor Captain.
Here. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of December 21st, 2022.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and second for approval. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, clerk please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger, Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, minutes are approved, 9-0. We have one communication this evening for the Martin Luther King proclamation. Will Janice Hare, Denise Haven, and Winfrey Cooper meet me at the podium? Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia, attended Morehouse College in Atlanta and Crozier Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania, was a student thereafter at Boston University and the University of Pennsylvania, and who following his studies became a spiritual leader of his church. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as a spiritual leader not only of his own congregation, but of millions throughout the world, espoused the philosophy of nonviolence to all mankind, and in recognition of his teachings was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his campaign for civil rights extended his work to the benefit of all humanity, especially for the poor, and was a leader in the cause of world peace. And whereas the city of Elgin is blessed and a compassionate city, priding itself on its diversity and welcoming its many immigrant groups and its many communities of faith. And whereas the City of Elgin, through its Human Relations Commission and the Dr. King Celebration Committee, has honored the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for 38 years, reflecting our commitment to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of a nation committed to nonviolence and love in our cities. Now, therefore, I, David Captain, Mayor of the City of Elgin, Illinois, do hereby proclaim Saturday, January 21st, or January 14th, 2023, as the day in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council. Thank you, citizens of Elgin, for this opportunity to share with you some great news. On January the 14th, we will be live and in person at Elgin Community College for the Martin Luther King 38th Annual Prayer Breakfast Celebration. We will have an awesome speaker, Dr. Reverend Felicia Boyd from the United Methodist Church here in Elgin. We will have singing and some great activities and some wonderful food. We will have some politicians there and the community. You know, the community have sold our tickets out. We only had 250, and before we knew it, we didn't have none. So we're really pleased and proud of that. I do want to share with you also the opportunity that we will continue to have our food drive. Some information from our leader on Joe Ward's. No, you didn't. We are looking to collect over 100,000 pounds of food. All the food and money will be divided and donated to 6 local pantries. Every dollar donated can purchase 8 pounds of food by the pantries. You can make your check out to the City of Elgin, the MLK food pantry, the food drive. We also will have the opportunity to award 12 high school seniors with scholarships. Great donations came in, great contributions came in for us to provide those students with scholarships to go to college, to start their journey and help them on their way to seeking higher education. That is tremendous. We hadn't had those numbers in quite some time. So we are very proud of that. We all worked hard and diligently because we like what we're doing. We're passionate about what we're doing. We love the City of Elgin. We love the community. So we do our part and ask you to do your part. Please support us, and we thank you.
And I'm going to be really quick. I wanted to point out the fact that we've had 4 nominations for our Dr. King Humanitarian Award. It's going to be so wonderful to be live and in person. This is just incredible, and it'll be wonderful. So the 4 nominees are Marcus Banner from the One Center, Shirley Bassett, who was the driving force between last year's Juneteenth celebration here in Elgin, Mansi Patel, who is the HR Director and Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Family Service Association of Greater Elgin, and Dan Rouse from Elgin Police Department. Our nominees reflect our community, they reflect the diversity of our community, and it's going to be wonderful to acknowledge their contributions to our community. And I want to thank Councilwoman Powell, because she stole everything I was going to say about Sunday. But for the listening and viewing audience, if you want to attend the film, please go to the city's website and click the link and make your reservations, because those reservations are also filling up fast, and that's a great thing. So thank you, Elgin. Thank you, Kim Dewis, for everything that you've done in terms of helping us. And thank you to all of our some of our committee members back here. And also thank you to the Human Relations Commission, under which the Celebration Committee operates. So thanks a lot.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Winfried Cooper. I am the current chair for the Human Relations Commission. I'd like to speak again on behalf of the MLK and the HRC. I want to thank everyone for either coming, participating, and getting involved. This is what Dr. King wanted, to show equality, to show that there's love, that love is the most important thing. We have survived. This is our first biggest event in over 2 years during a pandemic. And when times are rough, when times are hard, when everyone is afraid of what's going on, we relied on each other, we relied on respect, we relied on love. We may have different opinions, but we could come together, and that's what Dr. King wants. So I ask everyone, please, if you have got tickets, please come down, and please come down to our movie and understand that love overconquers hate. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Brings us to the portion we allow the public to speak. We have one person signed up this evening, Sherry Liskey.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and I'd like to say Happy New Year. And in the spirit of compassion and love and equity, I'd like to bring up one topic with just a couple points. And the topic I would like to bring up tonight is the couple comments on a letter that I received this past week from the city of Elgin, and it's about the lead service line information. And so apparently I have lead in my water system at some point. And so I read the letter, and I went on the website and, looked at the map and the transparency site. It's really beautiful. And I printed up the important information about Elgin drinking water. And I read through that and highlighted or circled some things. And what I really just want to say tonight is thank you for informing the community about their water situation in such a wonderful way. And even though one of my friends informed me that this has already been discussed and decided, I think that sometimes things can be revisited. And what I'd like to propose tonight is that, okay, so one of the ways that people who have lead in their water can deal with it is by getting a filter and putting it on their faucet. And what I'd like to promote is that the city of Elgin provide the houses that have the lead service lines, provide them a filter until the part that the city is responsible for, until that is changed out. And from my understanding, just like trying to look on the internet, because I'm a homeowner, so I'm like, oh, okay, what should I do about this? So I'm not sure, but it looks like the filters are anywhere between $20 and $150. And so there's according to the information, there's like 13,000 lead service lines that need to be replaced. And so that comes out, if you have like a high-end filter, that comes out to about $1.6 million. And somehow I think that the city could find that money. And I think that they could have a program, and maybe it's not just the city, but it could be like the businesses that want to give back to the community. It could be the social service organizations. It can be like a campaign, like a collaborative campaign of providing these filters for the households. Also, then the second point is about providing testing and testing for lead levels in the body for the children and pregnant women. And we could do that by collaborating with the local healthcare providers, clinics, schools, and other local agencies, and in community events. And all this information, beside the money, I did get from the information that I got from the city. And I understand that this was voted on in the past to provide people with these filters, and it was voted down. But I really do think that this is an important public health issue, and I believe that it can be revisited. And really, as a city, we can be on the forefront, and not like some other cities in the country that are not. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mayor Captain.
Ms. Powell?
To address Ms. Liskey's comment, if I can ask City Manager Kozel, because I know that we are providing filters to the homes that actually did test high for lead. That I just wanted to clarify that is correct.
We're working on a program that will provide filters for any houses that, excuse me, may potentially be affected. And there will be a presentation to the City Council by Water Director Eric Weiss on February 8th that we will be addressing many, in fact, all of the issues that Ms. Liskey presented this evening.
Great, thank you.
Okay. That brings us to bids. First item is bid number 22-063, Bowes Creek Country Club Tractor.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend we give the bid to Burris Equipment Company for the purchase of a tractor for Bowes Creek in the amount of $40,489.
Second.
It's been moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0. Item 2 is bid number 22-066, Bowes Creek Country Club mower.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend we give the bid to Revels Turf and Tractor for the purchase of a mower for Bowes Creek in the amount of $29,688.
Second?
Move the second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon, Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0. That brings us to other business. The first item is consideration of petitions 43-22 and 49-22, 581 North McLean Boulevard, amendment to planned development and conditional use to establish a membership organization with a commercial event space within an existing multi-tenant building. Mr. Malat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This tenant space is located within the Wing Park Shopping Center, located at the southeast corner of McLean Boulevard and Wing Street. Here is McLean and this is Wing Street. O'Reilly Auto Parts is here, Illinois Park School here, Walgreens here, Safe Light Auto Glass is here, and this is Calvary Lutheran Church. The applicant proposes to open the Veterans of Foreign Wars Watch City Post 1307 within a 2,500 square foot vacant tenant space. The VFW intends to provide a place for Elgin veterans to share camaraderie, find assistance if need be, and get involved in the community. The VFW would use the space to hold meetings and organizational activities for its members and their families, as well as others in the community. The last permanent home for the VFW was at 1601 Weld Road, but they sold that building in 2017. The substantial interior renovation would create a cantina at the front of the tenant space where members and their guests could enjoy food and beverage from either tables and chairs or from a bar countertop like a typical restaurant bar. Monthly meetings and other events, such as holiday parties, birthday parties, and baby showers, would take place at the back of the tenant space. The VFW would include a full commercial kitchen. The VFW plans to apply for a liquor license and a license for video gaming terminals. No exterior changes to the building are proposed. The request also includes a departure to the parking requirements for the VFW. Parking counts demonstrated that less than 1/3 of parking spaces were occupied at the busiest time for the shopping center, which was midday on Saturday. In other words, almost 220 of the 319 on-site parking spaces are available to accommodate the VFW and any future permitted uses. If the VFW is approved, the approximately 62,000 square foot shopping center would only have about 11,000 square feet of vacant space left. The applicant is available should you have any questions. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval, subject to conditions outlined within your packet.
Move for approval.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded for approval, subject to conditions. Any questions for Mr. Malat or the petitioners? Mr. Thorne.
I just want to say it's been a long time since the Elgin VFW Post 1307 had a home, and I'm very happy about it.
I'm happy too. It's in my neighborhood. I'm glad to see the business there, and I'm glad to see the VFW be one of the tenants. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Rauschenberger,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0. Item 2 is consideration of petition 45-22, 725 West Chicago Street, amendment to an existing conditional use for an accessory packaged liquor sales establishment. Mr. Malat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property is located at the southwest corner of Chicago Street and Sheridan Street. Chicago is here, and this is Sheridan. This is the Oak Tree Plaza Shopping Center, home to Mel's Pizza, Golden Skillet, and several others. Dairy Queen is here, and Elgin Fire Station number 6 is here. Ram Foods requests an amendment to their 2015 conditional use so that they can use signage to advertise the availability of beer, wine, and alcohol. This request is consistent with a broader citywide amendment in 2017 necessitated by a U.S. Supreme Court decision in which the court held that signs could not be treated differently based upon their content. Also, Ram Foods requests an amendment to their 2015 conditional use so that they can sell packaged beer in individual bottles or cans. City Council amended the liquor code in 2017, and part of that amendment established the Center City Business District, which is Kimball Street on the north, Dundee Avenue and Villa Street on the east, National Street on the south, and State Street on the west, from which the sale of alcohol in individual containers is prohibited. Ram Foods is not located within this area. No other changes are proposed to store operations. The applicant is available should you have any questions. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval, subject to conditions outlined within your packet.
Move for
Move for
approval.
approval, subject to the conditions.
Moved and seconded for approval, subject to conditions. Any questions for Mr. Malat or the petitioner? Hearing none, it levels the playing field and for them and puts them in competitive environment with the other businesses, similar businesses. And this is kind of a thing that gets changed over time for us. And I have to congratulate you. I think it's probably the most signatures I've seen to approve a petition since I've been doing this last 20 years. So congratulations. Anything else? Mr. Thorne.
I would also like to congratulate him, and it's kind of near and dear to my heart because that's in the neighborhood I grew up in. I was in Ram Foods just the other day, just getting something small. It's in my current neighborhood, but it's 1 block from where I grew up. It was originally a Texaco gas station, and they regularly fixed my bicycle. But I've been in there. They've also, I believe, had at times neighborhood UPS deliveries then get diverted there if someone is not at their home and you go pick it up there. So at any rate, I hope this helps them. They've been a welcome addition to the neighborhood, and I wish you continued success.
Anything else? Ms. Powell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I see the petitioners here. I know them personally, and I think the reason why you see all of these signatures is because when these folks came before us a number of years ago wanting to sell liquor, we told them no, or some of us told them no. This body told them no. And it was pretty disheartening because as Councilman Thoren mentioned, they've been an asset to the community. They've been a friend to the community. They are well respected. They don't generally have problems there. And they were denied the opportunity, as someone just mentioned, to compete with other retailers in our community. They've been responsible business owners. And since they've had this liquor license, I haven't heard any complaints. They've been responsible from the time that it did come back and they were able to get a liquor license, but probably much watered down from what they originally wanted to have and didn't have the ability to do signs, sell the individual bottles, have packaged liquor. So glad to see this come back. Hate that you had to come back and ask for it and pay another fee to go through this process. But thank you for being in our community and being responsible business owners. I know a lot of people really love and appreciate your presence in the community. Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Dixon, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I too just want to say congratulations to the family. I've been a part of this journey, and you guys coming here, so this is all coming full circle. So hard-working family who cares about their community, takes care of their business, and they do that with respect and honor, and so I commend that. So continue up the good work and continue to be an asset in that community. So thank you.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Steffen?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Congratulations. Item 3 is a consideration of petition 46-22, 63 Douglas Avenue, Unit 201, a conditional use to establish a tattoo parlor on the second floor of an existing multi-tenant building. Mr. Malat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property is located along the east side of Douglas Avenue between Division Street and Highland Avenue. Here is Douglas, this is Division, and this is Highland. This is the police station, the Tower Building, Post Office, the Hemmons, and last but not least, City Hall. Iron Wings Tattoo requests approval of a new tattoo parlor within a vacant 260 square foot, second floor tenant space in the McBride Building. Iron Wings Tattoo is a women-owned and operated body art studio. The applicant is a multi-award-winning tattoo artist who is currently working at another Elgin tattoo parlor, but is looking to open her own business. The space would have up to 3 tattoo body art stations, and it is intended that tattoo and body art services will be available by appointment only. The applicant is not proposing any exterior changes to the building and only minor interior remodeling to add a code-required sink. The facility would comply with all requirements of the Illinois Department of Public Health. The applicant is available should you have any questions. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval, subject to conditions outlined within your packet.
Move for approval.
Second?
Moved and second for approval, subject to conditions. Any discussion? Questions for Mr. Malat? Mr. Dixon?
No questions, really. Happy to have it. This is from, I'm going to say, Facebook to reality. Because it started with a conversation on Facebook and an applicant reaching out. And so you made it all the way through the gauntlet, you know, essentially. So congratulations to you. Thank you, Mark, for bringing this to fruition. Looks like a great project. Wish you well. Wish you best. And yeah, so happy to see it come to fruition. Thank you.
Anything else? Ms. Powell?
A question for Mark.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we now become like the tattoo capital of the Fox Valley?
I think I'm going to have that put on my bicep.
Because we've got quite a few downtown, but it's part of us being the art capital.
Yeah.
So
No, I think we're the haircut capital.
We're the haircut capital.
Tattoos might be
I
second.
think I can support that, too.
congratulations.
Okay. Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez? Yes. Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Item 4 is an authorization for payments.
Move for approval.
Second?
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez? Yes. Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0. Item 5 is authorization of payment for KLM Engineering.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez? Yes. Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0. Consent agenda.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez? Yes. Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Miscellaneous business.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez? Yes. Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0. The next committee of the whole meeting will be Wednesday, January 25th, 2023, at 6 p.m. in the City Council chambers. The next regular meeting of the Elgin City Council will be Wednesday, January 25th, 2023, at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez? Yes. Powell?
Yes.
Rauschenberger?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain. Mayor Captain?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
We are adjourned.
Sorry. Distracted. Or has that been?